Was a time of the preach when a story begun. The choice of a woman and the love of a man, and how he loved her so dearly. He went out of his mind. Well, she left him for someone that she left behind. And he cried.
Hey,
Hey, we're here.
are we here?
We're here, my friend.
What's the sound? What's the sound? Is it? Have we arrived? All right.
We have.
All right.
Wherever that destination might be, we are there.
You are kind of peeping over the fence today.
like
so-
Wilson again.
Yeah, I know you are. I don't know
All
if
they
I
see
like
is my
that.
face. They don't see our setup or anything like that. But yes, I'm peeking over my iPad here
So
and
this is
staring at Ronnie.
This is session 9. We've been doing this for 9 weeks. Oh, look, there we are live. I'm actually following on Facebook tonight. So, wow, that's great. That's great. I love it. So, hello everybody out there. I should say over here, wherever the camera is. We're back for our Wednesday evening Q&A that folks seem to have enjoyed, and we have enjoyed it very much. We don't really have a heavy-duty theological conversation in store for you tonight. That's
That we
not
know of.
That we know of. That's
Yeah.
not planned. But if you have questions, then certainly throw them into the comments. And I'm new to all this, so I don't know what comments I'm actually looking at.
You're looking
here.
at
Are
so
these Simple Faith comments, or are they mine? Or
Ronnie is the newbie when it comes to this. So,
listen, I joined. Let me say this: I joined Facebook in 2008.
yeah, shortly,
Early
so
ad-
a few years after
ear-
it really launched.
Early adopter. But shortly thereafter, I moved my profile to a page that seemed to serve me best at the time, and so I was really insulated from all the Facebook drama.
That's great.
And then and then just this month, I kept having problems authenticating who my actual identity, and Facebook's got kind of squirrely about things. I mean, you can probably run fake news and false ads, and get away with it, but an actual human being has to do all these steps to authenticate oneself. And so anyway, I went back had to start over with a traditional profile. It's been quite the learning experience.
So yeah, what you're seeing on your phone is people watching it from your watch party. So it's not necessarily the Simple Faithers, but I have their comments pulled up here. We have a lot of people watching us. Which is great.
Great.
Thank you guys for joining us
Yeah,
tonight.
absolutely. We have a big update tonight, and it may be a bit anticlimactic, we might say.
So let's get to it now.
But it is an update about reopening, and everyone that is on the Simple Faith email list. Are you on that Simple Faith email list? I hope that you are.
I am, yes.
You're going to receive this wonderful letter, though it will be in digital form. So you'll receive this via email. You'll receive this on the website.
Yep. And it'll be posted to Facebook.
Posted to Facebook right here where you're on the same site that you're watching. It'll be on my personal site about where we've been and where we're going. So just to highlight a few things. March 15th was our last public gathering as a congregation. And gosh, that's
a
long
time
time.
ago.
Long time ago. And I said on that last day, I said two things that, as I recall, that in the time of chaos and uncertainty, it's really the church's opportunity to love and to serve. And I think we've been able to. That's a high ideal, but I think we have been able to do that and serve others. We have put into the community with organizations and individuals who have been in need of help some $40,000 of assistance. That is while also meeting all of our regular financial obligations, meaning that Garrett has still received a paycheck this entire time, and so has Ronnie.
And which I'm grateful for.
Yes, I am too. And so we're grateful for that. And we've been able to to pay the stipends to musicians and children's church workers and nursery workers and everyone. And we didn't want to take this business as usual approach, and no one is getting rich working at A Simple Faith, that's for sure. But everyone relies upon those dollars, and so we've been able to maintain that, and we're grateful and to you for your generosity. I've always made the promise that I'll never ask you for money, and if I've ever asked for money, it's to help someone else. It's not ever to help the church. I've never appealed on behalf of the church for a building program or a capital campaign or to meet any kind of budget. People have just always been generous, and I appreciate it. And once again, you've exceeded all expectations. So that's great. And now attention turns to what's going to happen in the future. And so we'll go over a few things. You may have read, did you read the article that I posted today? It's from the millennial pastor.
I saw that.
What's his name? Pastor Rick? Pastor Eric?
I didn't see his name.
He's got a great high-volume website. I think he's Episcopalian, Church of England, or Anglican. And
sounds hipster to me.
Yeah, he's
so,
hipster.
Yeah, he would be.
He was very
millennial.
hipster and millennial pastor. He said he's an iPhone pastor for a typewriter church, which I think is a great byline. And he said he wrote a scenario of what happens when people go back to church for the first time. I don't know if any of that struck any chords with you or what you thought about it.
No, I liked it because I think it really puts into perspective really kind of what we're facing, the reality of the situation. It gets into everyone's anxious and ready to get back to church. I mean, the church is meant for community. It's not meant to be serviced alone and do this thing on your own. It really is meant for community. So, we've been doing this remotely, and it's been working, and everyone's been absolutely on par with it, and it's been fantastic. But I know everyone's itching to get back together. Yeah. But what this gets into is the reality of what might be facing us when that does occur.
So I'll find that article, and we might send it as a link later.
Yeah,
and post it just for folks can see that. So the question that's been put to me repeatedly in the last few weeks has been, okay, so when are we gonna get together again? When are we gonna gather again? It's a regular question. It's the right question. It's a good question. I have been. I'm in the unenviable position of not being able to please everyone, maybe not please anyone, because I've had the question put to me two different ways, from two different polarities, two different extremes. Imagine that. I've had people say, it's time to get back together, there's nothing to worry about. It's all overblown. And then I've had people say, we can't ever get together again until there's a vaccine. And the wisdom is going to be, I believe, not the mushy middle, but somewhere between those two paths. And that being said, we're going to give you the date, July 12th, 2020, the year of our Lord. And that's still over a month away. And so people are going to ask, well, why that rationale? Why that arbitrary date? And I'll give you some of the rationale behind picking that date. And I'm not just giving it to you. Garrett had 3 pastors today reach out to me via email or text message saying, what are you going to do and when are you going to do it? And I was able to send this letter to them because I just finished it. And I'll give you some of the rationale behind this decision to hold off to July 12th. Number one, we just don't have the human power or the space to follow the recommended safety guidelines that are out there for reopening. Now, because here's the thing about churches gathering together again. You go to a restaurant, it's 50% capacity, or it's supposed to be. You go to the beach, maybe you can keep your distance, maybe you can't. You go into a hardware store, you can keep your distance. churches are unique in that they're not places where we typically keep our distance. Handshakes,
Almost
hugs.
opposite.
It's right the opposite. And we don't have enough. Garrett and I are the only full-time folks at the church. And we don't have enough non-vulnerable volunteers that can create cleaning stations, that can ensure that the restrooms are wiped down after every single visit, because that's a recommended safety guideline. Recommendations about space, recommendations about families sitting together, taking people's temperature, questionnaire at the door.
Yeah.
Now you think, well, that's extreme. My wife Cindy finished her last day at school for the year this year. And granted, nothing has been routine since March 15th for school system here locally either. But even today, on the last day of school, no students there, just a handful of other adults, they take her temperature at the door and log it. And she answers the same questionnaire she's been asked every day she goes to work over the last several weeks about her health, where she's been, has she been sick, has she been running a fever. So we don't have the human power to do that, the space to do that, and we don't. Honestly, I don't want, and some churches are doing that, and this is fine. I don't want to do the worship sign-up thing. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
We've got room for 75 people. The first 75 get in, and after that, nobody else gets in. That's as bizarre to me as all the other requirements, suggestions, and so I'm not comfortable with that one either. And I would just rather wait in that regard. So that's number one. We just don't have the human power to pull it off. Not as it should be done. Make sense to you, Garrett? We've talked about this.
Yeah. Makes
Excessively.
sense. Perfect sense to me. Yeah.
So number two, and this one may be touchy for some, but it shouldn't be. I have no regard whatsoever for the politicization of the pandemic. I pay no attention to any politician, right or left, who says you got to keep churches closed, or you better it's time to open up the churches. If a person's background is not rooted in science, if it's not rooted in infectious diseases, I'm not really prone to take counsel when we aren't dealing with anything except that. We are dealing with a sickness, we're dealing with disease, and you would not believe, and I don't have sympathy for me. I'm an old hand at this. I got tough skin, and besides that, I haven't had to be in any major struggles about this. But I've got friends right now that are absolutely being chewed up by their congregations, because some are really way over here on this position, and some are really way over here on this position, and the leadership is just being chewed alive. And and I'm not saying this is the astute way to dealing with it. It's just unnecessary. That part is, whatever the political feel, whatever anybody says about it at that level, that's their business. We have to use good reason here. Mm-hmm. Faith within reason. And so that's I don't really have a comment other than that. Number three, it doesn't matter what other churches are doing. Well, so-and-so church has opened, or this church has begun. Good for them. Maybe they have more volunteers. Maybe they have more space. Maybe they're not taking the same precautions. Maybe they're taking more precautions and able to pull it off where we don't feel that we can safely pull it off. Mm-hmm. So, I'm only responsible for this congregation. And that responsibility, and I don't mind telling you, the liability of that responsibility is on my mind. And I always like to say that if if we did everything the way other churches did things, we would have never started Simple Faith in the first place. So, what other churches are doing is good, and I support them. Good and well for them if they can pull it off safely. Now, there have been a whole slew of churches that have opened too soon,
right,
and have had major outbreaks. In fact, the largest outbreaks in this country have been in prisons, meatpacking plants, and churches.
What do all three have in common?
Close contact. Very
prisons,
close
meat, and
contact.
Church.
Very close contact.
We can find another.
Right. And in fact, South Korea did a fantastic job just crushing the curve, as they say, and which they would have done even better. They had 50 cases of their initial cases in South Korea that came from one church service.
Yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, I've had. Here we. 1 second here.
Yeah, man.
Oops. There, I was trying to get the split screen going. Yeah, I mean, I've had discussions with friends, whose churches have opened up already. And, they're nervous, and rightfully so. And some of the questions I asked them were, straight to the point. Why? What's the rush?
Yeah.
I mean, and some churches really are struggling financially.
Yes.
Absolutely struggling, and there's a fine line when it comes to reopening in regard to finances.
Sure.
You would hope that they would throw caution in the mix and say, it's not worth the risk. We will be fine. God will provide, and people will be faithful. And when we come through the other side, people will be grateful for the stances we took. Some places are reopening because they really have no other alternative.
Well, and you feel sympathetic to that,
right,
because you feel
absolutely.
sympathetic to businesses that they may know in their heart that this is too soon, but
right.
I'm going under.
Yeah.
That's a real tension. I understand that.
And then the other side of it too is one of my friends, I asked them, is it a pride thing to be able to say, hey, we're open.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
A pat on the back, and then they're not reaching as many people in reality because people are still scared.
Yeah.
People are still nervous.
They are, and that sort of brings me to the fourth point. I was eyeballing mid-June initially, and I have to say, number 4, that the Memorial Day weekend here in Walton County gave me great pause.
Yeah.
Gave me great pause. And I don't know, if you're looking at the folks who've joined 40 or 50 over here, and I don't know how many are over on the Simple Faith side, but I don't know where all of you live. I don't know what you did Memorial Day, but a lot of your neighbors came here. And we love the fact that we're a tourist location, and we sometimes loathe the fact that we're a tourist location, as these things go. This past Memorial Day was insane. The crowds would have been fine, but again, restaurants could only do 50% capacity. Grocery stores looked like the Wild West. The beaches were packed. Crab Island looked like the 4th of July. Just tons of people packed into a tiny space. And I want to commend the health officials in Walton County, Florida. For the longest time, we had 3-4 dozen cases. And Walton County did a great job of squashing the pandemic curve down. But we're not a closed system. We're not a closed community. And we're not like a typical community that you might find somewhere else. We're here at this beach, and 4 million people come to this beach every year. And if the beaches are open, several of those million are coming anyway, whether there's a pandemic or not. that's
Right.
how it is. And we don't know yet the impact that has on our community. It's good for the tourist dollars, but we don't know health-wise what that's going to mean. So I'm willing, out of abundance of utmost and extreme caution, to let the germ settle for a couple more weeks.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the biggest thing, I've been saying from a personal standpoint is we really have to see, in light of what you just said, all these people coming in from multiple states. I was out and about, what was it, last Friday? We took our boys up to the zoo. We're very smart about when we go out, where we go out, what time we go out.
Yeah.
We're very careful about doing that. And so I'm saying that, I'm prefacing that by saying we're not afraid to go out, but we're very smart and intentional about when,
Right.
where, why, all that stuff. And, I saw over a dozen state tags, just
yeah,
Friday.
I know.
And that's
I know.
that's one of the biggest things why we're saying let's give it a few more weeks, really, because we don't know exactly what this is going to do. We don't know if there's going to be a breakout. We don't know what the numbers are going to do for those other states where people are coming from.
Right.
But we just know that, hey, they were here. So
I went to Publix Saturday morning, Cindy and I, and we went early Saturday morning. And again, we're in Freeport. We're not right at the beach. And that's
20A?
Yeah, we're on Highway 2020A. And so we have a little bit of distance. But the Freeport Publix has become a tourism Publix.
Yeah.
As folks are coming south. And so we thought, let's get in there Saturday morning before some of the later arriving tourists get here. And as we were leaving, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee,
Missouri,
Mississippi.
What are you doing?
They were, and granted, they're coming to the beach, and I understand people have been boxed up for months, and they, I wore, think what you want to me, I wore my mask, not because I'm afraid. I come home. I have multiple children in this house.
Yeah.
I'm not going to expose them. Cindy is traveling to Georgia in a couple weeks to see her mom and dad, both over 80. Her dad, just fresh from home with the kidney surgery, has dementia. She'll be staying with our friend Peggy. Peggy, you may be listening tonight. Peggy didn't want me to tell you all this, but she's over 80 and has survived with lung cancer for 7 years after they gave her about 3, 4, 6 months. Doing fantastic. Cindy and I are not putting ourselves in those situations because there are people we have to interact with over the next few weeks.
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
are too vulnerable. And so we do it to protect them.
Yeah, and we don't when we do reopen, we don't want to be standing guard and going, you're vulnerable. We want to turn you away.
No.
I mean, that's ludicrous. I mean, really, in people that need to stay home will stay home, but
Right.
we want to be mindful of the whole community, not just those that are able and can go.
Right.
Otherwise, that might be a pretty small crowd, and we can minister to them, absolutely, but we also want to minister to the whole body. We don't just want to
and that's
pinpoint
really,
just a couple.
And that's really the last point I want to make, and you can read this when you
Yeah.
receive the letter, is that in order for something actually to reopen, it had to have been closed.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't felt, I know for a fact, that Simple Faith has not been closed. We haven't had public gatherings in person on site, but the witness and the work of a Simple Faith has continued unabated. I already mentioned the resources put into the community. Susan Thornton could tell you right now that giving is at or exceeds the usual giving that we have received year in and year out.
Right, yeah.
Through this period. It is
Just
not
crazy.
It has not fallen whatsoever. While we have had intentionally more expenditures to help others. So, I'm not happy for the pandemic, but I can be grateful within it that we've been able to see this sort of thing happen. We have 4 times online attendance compared to our on-site attendance.
Yeah.
which is bizarre land. Now, granted, folks are at home, and if everyone was loose and running around and things were normal, we probably wouldn't see those things. But we haven't missed, connecting with people. It's not the same, at all from being face to face, but there's still presence there. And I can tell you, whether you believe it or not, Garrett and I have worked harder during these
harder and
few
smarter.
weeks
Yeah.
and smarter than we have during normal times, because there's been so much adjustment and things are different. So we had a huge learning curve, and now we're in rhythm. But all the same work has to be done. I conclude my letter with a question from Shane Claiborne, and I think it captures my thoughts perfectly, and I'll share them with you. Wouldn't it be great, he asked, if churches were the last places to reopen because of how obsessed we are with loving our neighbors and protecting the most vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great, because we're not going to suffer, and our community is not going to suffer by us waiting a few more weeks and setting a little bit later target.
Yeah, and really, we kind of debated a question for tonight that comes from a couple weeks ago, which was kind of gets at the point of this a little bit. It gets at the heart of why we're continuing to do what we do. We recognize that, as I mentioned earlier, this is a community thing. We are meant to pull together. We're not meant to be isolated. But if anything, this is a true test to our faith, in the sense that it's introspective. We have to really look at, am I okay? If I'm not a part of my Sunday gathering, on a weekly basis, am I okay? Can I withstand the heat of life and everything that it throws at me? Am I okay standing on my own, growing in my faith and pushing myself? Or do I recognize and realize, man, I've got to do a little bit of work on myself?
Yeah.
In the context of the community, but also separately,
Well, think about it like this. It's a good way of putting it, Garrett. And think about how you send your kid off to college that first year.
it's coming.
And yeah, it'll come in. It'll come for
too
you. And you send them off to college, and they leave in August, and you don't see them again to Thanksgiving. September, October, November. 90, 100 days. Now, when you send that child off like that, you are sending them off, you hope, with everything that they need to survive that 100 days,
Mm-hmm.
and come back with their laundry. And
Hopefully at least washed a couple times.
right,
In that,
and they'll
90
grow
days.
up. They'll have to sort of find an individual means of standing on their own 2 feet. Have to create a different kind of community,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a short term
Right.
growing experience. Even beyond, for a lot of college freshmen, this is a short term drinking experience and partying experience, and that's been that way for a lot of people in quarantine too, by the way. But there are these seasons in our life where we're not going to have all the support systems that we're accustomed to. And this has been a good season to reflect about that and to think about that, to grow through that. And even as I've talked on Sunday mornings, a lot of the talks have been around that very subject. So that's where we are. We're hoping for July 12. That also, by the way, lets 4th of July pass.
Yep.
Now, granted, we won't know how the community is affected, but Memorial Day is going to give us a good idea. We're
Exactly.
going to know. We're going to know if folks sort of kept their germs to themselves and were smart while they were here, or if they brought them to restaurant workers and others. In our community, I hope you'll pray and remember in solidarity the folks at Chautauqua Rehabilitation Center in Defuniak. The largest single COVID-19 outbreak in Walton County is at that nursing home. And it has been devastating for families there. I hope that you will also remember to pray for Mary Helen Skinner. She is in her last days. She's in a care facility, and she's been, of course, in a great deal of isolation. They here at the end, they have allowed family to visit her here in the last couple days, and so pray for her, and pray. And Garrett and I said we would sort of wrap up tonight with this conversation. Pray for our country. 100,000 COVID-19 deaths. We hit that mark today, but the recent extremely high-profile deaths at the hands of police officers of young African-American men. The one in Brunswick, Georgia, by his neighbors, and the one in Minneapolis. I believe it's Minneapolis. I know it's in Minnesota.
Yeah, it was Minneapolis. Yeah.
That it's heartbreaking. I say that. I'm a white man. I'm white, middle-aged, Christian, Protestant. I was born on third base in this country. The greatest education in my life has been raising an African-American son.
Yeah.
The greatest single education of my existence. And people can say, oh, everyone's treated the same in this country now. Come sit with me. Come have a cup of coffee with me. And I can tell you some stories about that young man's first 21 years that is not the case. Mm-hmm. And I've had the conversation with him about keeping your hands on the wheel if you're pulled over. And you think, oh, you're judging everyone, and you're one of those. One of those what? One of those what? I'm on the side of equality and justice and safety, especially for my own child. And we have a complicated history in this country. Mm-hmm. And this issue has been with us since the very beginning of the formation of this nation. And it's not going away in our lifetimes. I would say that to folks who are more liberal, and they think, oh, we're going to overcome this with better education, and we're going to aspire to higher things. This is nasty at the core heart sin. We don't use that word very often, but that's what it is.
Oh yeah,
and it requires being dealt with at that level, systematically, individually. I know you have some thoughts about it too.
Yeah, man, this is a topic that I don't have a ton of experience with. This is something only in recent years I've come to a better understanding of based on conversations I've had to have. Most everybody here listening knows that I grew up in a small farming community in Iowa. And when I say a small farming community in Iowa, I mean like 1,500 people. Like 98, 99% of the county was Caucasian.
Yeah.
Those with that you'd considered colored, whether it be Latino, Hispanic, or Asian, or Black, most were adopted.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my school, when I grew up, going to school, we had, I think, 2 or 3 students that were Black that were in an adopted white family, and that was my first time. We had an incident happen where this young man was on our track team and guys were hazing him. And they were friends with them. And in their mind, they were doing it as, hey, we're just buddies. We're just friends being friends, poking at each other. Friends make fun of each other, call each other names, but it crossed the line. There comes a point where it absolutely crosses the line. And I remember, I remember this like it happened yesterday. Our principal called us into the gym. The whole junior high and high school classes all lined up and just tore into everybody and just said that we will not stand
Good
for
him.
any kind of and it was eye opening. But even then, even going to college, I had some friends that were black, but it wasn't really until I went to that I did my grad work, and we actually dove into intercultural studies, and we dug into a few books that really opened my eyes on race issues in America, and based on that, there's this term called racialization. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or if some of you guys are aware of it, but basically it's this concept that you're either part of the solution or you're making it worse.
Yeah.
And it depends on your awareness. And
right.
it really, so racialization is your social construct, where you grew up, where you went to school, the people you hung out with, where you lived, your family background, and, the whole dynamic, it comes into play. And the racialization is if you're not a part of the ongoing solution to help bring awareness to this and bring it to the forefront that this is an issue, and I'm actively gaining an understanding and choosing to be active on it, you're actually causing a further divide, because some people will say, well, there aren't any issues. They're just making it worse by politicizing it.
Right.
And
and Dr. King,
crazy, man.
Dr. King said that he had the most difficult working relationship with was the white moderate.
Yeah. Yeah.
that an out and out racist, you could meet them head on. The moderate always went to the middle, or always tried to just, let's slow down and not make a big deal. Mm-hmm. And that, he always said, was the biggest hindrance. And it's so baked in. I've never shared this publicly. I've shared it. I think maybe I've shared it with you and a few people privately, but I've never said it publicly. And so I guess I'll do it now. When Bryce and Blaze were both just so tiny, they were 2 and 3 years old, mm-hmm. and 2 years old, and I had not met Cindy yet, and I had the boys alone at that time, and I was at this after church dinner party. All these little kids and young families are there. My kids are there, and kind of multi-generational. So
right,
young
yeah.
adults and then their parents and I don't know, 40 people or whatever mm-hmm. are there. And we're sitting around finishing up dessert, and they start talking about their kids growing up and starting to date and all these things. All that funny stuff that young parents are talking about. It's funny then. It ain't funny when it starts. But, and somehow the subject of interracial dating came up. Now, my context different than yours, mm-hmm. but many of the same attitudes. Appalachian, Deep South, North Georgia mountains, extreme racism. Not everybody wasn't a racist, but there was extreme racism.
Yeah, for those
in that community, and extreme racism remains in that community. In 1987, in the winter of 1987, I was 16 years old, and there was a Klan rally on the courthouse steps of my hometown.
That's nuts.
In 87.
The year I was born.
Not 67, not 57, 87. Okay?
Yeah.
So we're sitting around, and that's overt, okay? We're sitting around, and this was my first encounter with, oh my God, what does this mean? And so we're sitting around, and people talking about their kids dating when they get older, and a father says, well, I'll be fine with whoever my daughter dates, so long as, it's not a black man or a Mexican. I'm the pastor of this church. And I'm sitting there with my mouth falls open, and I'm like, and I didn't say anything. I just I was just quiet. And then someone else chimed in and said the same thing. And then a third. And after the third one, I said, "You do know I'm sitting here?" I mean, I'm not black. I'm not black, but I've got a black son.
Yeah.
And it was as if they were completely unaware. They were so comfortable with that discussion,
Right.
within the confines of that safe, complete white environment,
Right.
that suddenly, the other was present. And that, I knew then, I've gotten into more than I thought I did. Because I was young and naive, Garrett. I thought, you adopt a African-American child and everybody will treat him right and love him because they've treated me right and loved me. What an education. It's an education.
Yeah,
So my perspective,
unfortunate.
it's easy, and I got tons of friends and tons of family. My God, family that look at the unjust death of a black man in our society involving police officers, and the response that I hear so often is, "Well, if they had just done right, it wouldn't have happened."
Right. It's always what's the context. It's never.
And
when is this going to stop? It's just there's more of this. There's got to be more of the story.
Right.
And
Right.
that's part of
and I don't stop worrying just because my son is 21 and wears the uniform of this country.
Right. Take the uniform off. Put him in street
I
clothes.
still don't stop, being concerned. And I did the best I could. I did the best I could, and I wasn't always right about some things, and should have been. I lost count of the times I went to the middle school. Never had any problem, and it wasn't the middle school here. Bryce didn't go to middle school in Florida. He was treated with so much respect at Freeport High School, and I thank the coaches and the teachers and the administration there. I lost count of how many times I had to go to the middle school and say, somebody another kid on that football team has to stop calling my son the N-word. And Bryce was, as Bryce said, after his first day at middle school, "Hey, Dad, I doubled the black population." That's what he said when he came home from school that day. So it was a community,
Right. Yeah.
very much like yours. But all that, and Garrett and I texted today and talked about these very things. It's just pray for our country, and don't just pray. Remember, we talked about last week about prayer being an act of solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find ways, if we're the church, not to take sides. Accept the side of love and justice and what is right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And we have to find ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything else? Any questions out there? I've really stumbled into this stuff and probably get some people stirred up tonight, but that's all right.
No, it's good to have these conversations.
Yeah.
In light of what's going on, it just seems like there's something new every single week.
Ugh.
And I texted Ronnie earlier. I didn't post anything on my birthday really about what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, but he and I shared a birthday. Now people were posting about it was run the 2 I think it was like 2.6 or the date of his death. Run that many miles, and I didn't want to get caught up in just the social aspect of it, just doing it because everyone else is doing it. But man, I tell you, throughout that whole day, and Aaron can attest to this, I was just like, man, this guy should be celebrating his birthday just like me.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly unfortunate what happened. But it's not uncommon, and that's the root of what we're talking about. There's so many issues that run so deep. There's so much anger and hurt caused by the moderate, by people saying, well, it's just not that big of a deal.
It's been a big deal for a long time, brother.
It's just, yeah, and the biggest thing we have to do is become aware of, where we are in the context of this. Are we adding to this by not doing anything? Are we not speaking up? Are we not speaking out? Or are we, are we gaining an understanding? And are we having those conversations with those that are a minority? Mm-hmm. And are we doing anything? Mm-hmm. Yeah, at some point, there's action. There's awareness, there's understanding, and there's action.
And I'm like you. I haven't said a lot like on social media or posting things, and there's a place for that. Mm-hmm. I just, I feel like sometimes, what could I possibly say that adds light instead of fire and heat to these conversations? And it's really not about what I say as much as how I'm going to live and act and do. And there's just a reckoning that has to be had. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'll live to see it, I hope this country can do business with itself. I think this pandemic, there's so much stress and strain. Mm-hmm. There's so much abnormal feelings as it is, that it hasn't caused more racism. It hasn't caused more divisions. It simply pulls the cover back. Yeah. And we see what's there. And we are a country in need of racial reconciliation. Mm-hmm. We're in a country in need of grassroots, working people filling the gap between the haves and the have-nots, because that gap is even wider now. You would think we'd have a little equality through this. The richest people in the world, Garrett, over the last 100 days, are richer now.
Oh, it's absolutely nuts.
Than when they started. And there's 30 million Americans drawing unemployment or trying to.
Yeah, what's crazy is they lost money at the beginning of this because of the stock market going down.
Yeah,
and then it bound.
And those who say, "Oh, I didn't know we were getting into politics," this has nothing to do with politics.
Right? Yeah,
because political parties can't save us. They can't. They just can't. We need a moral, ethical, spiritual revolution of our hearts. Mm-hmm. That's the only chance we have. Mm-hmm. And having this season of quarantine, if that doesn't sharpen our awareness and need for this, I don't know what else will. I just don't know what else will.
Right. I remember at the beginning of all this, there was the introspective look, like, maybe I saw this everywhere on social media. It's like, maybe this is God giving us the time that we've always asked for.
Yeah.
And maybe I could, and there have been some really cool things happening in light of that, but you've also seen the real you, the real person deep down. Like you said, you pull back the layers and you begin to see, when things are tight, when you're stressed out, when the kids are at home all day screaming.
That's right.
It's just
short of money, uncertainty. Mm-hmm. When that's all there, it shows itself. Well, let's get out of here tonight. We've been heavy enough.
So
returning, tentatively opening July 12, and we'll have plenty of more information. I was talking to Billy McConnell today, and I said, "Yeah, no, he's good." I said,
"I'm just
poor Billy." I said, "Billy, tell Nancy I don't know if we'll ever have coffee and donuts ever again."
Oh man.
I don't know.
BYOC.
Things change or stuff like this. It just kind of makes us all a little paranoid.
With the joke is the cheese tray.
Yeah, Ricky Stanfield loves a cheese tray, and I don't know what we're gonna have to do for Ricky, but
we'll just buy him some craft singles and say, "Here's."
Yeah, and when everybody shows up here on Sunday mornings, we've been doing church from this room. It's like individually wrapped snacks.
Dude, I'm going to bring
there's no open snacks here.
I'm going to bring some First Watch, like a container full of biscuits and gravy and some bacon and just open it up.
Stop it. Hey,
Garrett's
everybody.
communion, gravy and biscuits.
Hey, you'd probably get some takers on that one, you know?
Oh, I'm not giving it.
It's not communion.
I want the whole
It's
body.
not communion.
I want the whole body in blood.
Yeah, you could say that you're going to do communion this way because of the pandemic. Hey, thanks for listening tonight. I hope we didn't bore you or waste your time. Sunday, 10 o'clock, right here in the upper room one more time. I'll be doing the second part of my talk from this previous Sunday about welcoming weakness, based on 2 Corinthians and Paul's discussion of the thorn in the flesh and God's grace being sufficient. So I hope you'll join me and all of us here, 10 o'clock Central Time, Sunday morning, live here on Facebook. Have a great night. Bye, Garrett.
See ya.
Was a time of the preacher when a story begun. Choice of a woman and the love of a man, and how he loved her so dearly, he went out of his mind. Well, she left him